On a quiet Tuesday evening, my 41-year-old son looked me straight in the eye and called me a dried-up relic pretending to matter. All because I mentioned I had a dinner date. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I simply smiled and said, "You'll see." The next night I put on my best dress, did my makeup with care, and set the table for two. Jason stood in the doorway, arms crossed, sneering at me like I was pathetic. "Who'd want you?" he spat. Then the doorbell rang. And when I opened that door, the color drained from his face. Because my date wasn't just anyone. It was someone Jason desperately needed on his side. Hello and welcome. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been judged by your own child for daring to live your life? For wanting companionship, joy, or even just a simple dinner with someone who makes you smile? If you've ever been made to feel like your happiness doesn't matter after a certain age, then this story is for you. Drop a comment and let me know if you've experienced this. And if you love stories about dignity, strength, and a little poetic justice, make sure to subscribe. You're not alone in this. My name is Jessica More. I'm 62 years old, and up until 2 years ago, I thought I had done everything right as a mother. I raised Jason by myself after his father walked out when he was only 3. I worked 2 jobs, one as a school administrator during the day and another doing bookkeeping at night, just to make sure he never went without. I saved every penny I could for his college fund. I attended every soccer game, every school play, every parent-teacher conference. I was there. Always. And Jason, he grew up to be successful. A corporate lawyer at a prestigious firm downtown. He married a woman named Vanessa, sharp, polished, and completely intolerant of anything she considered beneath her. They live in a beautiful home in the suburbs with their 2 children, my grandchildren, whom I barely get to see anymore. I retired a year and a half ago. I'd always imagined retirement as this golden chapter. Time to travel, maybe take up painting again, spend more time with my grandkids. But instead it's been lonely. Jason calls maybe once a month, and when he does, it's usually because he needs something. A favor, advice on some family matter, or worse, money. Vanessa never calls. And my grandchildren. I'm lucky if I see them twice a year. I tried not to let it hurt. I told myself he was busy. That life gets hectic when you're raising a family and building a career. But deep down I knew the truth. Jason had become ashamed of me. I wasn't polished enough for Vanessa's social circles. I didn't drive a luxury car or live in a gated community. I was just his mother. The woman who worked herself to the bone so he could have the life he now enjoyed. And that was the problem. He didn't want to be reminded of where he came from. It all started about 2 months ago. I'd been feeling restless. The walls of my small house seemed to close in on me more and more each day. So, on a whim, I joined a local book club that met at the community center every Thursday evening. That's where I met Thomas. Thomas was 65, a retired engineer with kind eyes and a warm smile. He was a widower. His wife had passed 3 years prior, and like me, he was just looking for connection. We started talking after one of the meetings, and before I knew it, we were getting coffee afterward. Then coffee turned into lunch. Then lunch turned into long walks in the park. Felt good. Natural. Like I was allowed to be a person again, not just a discarded relic of someone's past. I didn't tell Jason about Thomas at first. Why would I? He barely asked about my life anyway. But then, 3 weeks ago, Jason called. Not to check on me, but to ask if I could babysit the kids for the weekend because Vanessa wanted to go to some charity gala. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," I said gently. "I actually have plans this weekend." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Plans?" Jason repeated, his tone sharp. "What kind of plans?" "I'm having dinner with a friend," I said simply. "A friend?" His voice dripped with skepticism. "What friend?" "Just someone I met at my book club. His name is Thomas." Another pause. Longer this time. "His name." I could hear the judgment forming before he even spoke again. "Mom, are you serious right now?" Jason's voice had shifted from curious to cold. "You're going on a date. I wouldn't call it a..." "Jesus Christ." He cut me off. You're 62 years old. Don't you think it's a little, I don't know, embarrassing? The word hit me like a slap. Embarrassing, I repeated quietly. Yeah, Mom. Embarrassing. You're a grandmother. You should be focused on family, not chasing after men like some desperate. He stopped himself, but I could fill in the blank. I'm not chasing anyone, Jason, I said, my voice steady despite the tightness in my chest. I'm simply enjoying the company of someone who makes me feel valued. Valued? He scoffed. Right. Look, I don't have time for this. Just don't do anything stupid, okay? I'll find someone else to watch the kids. And he hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone, feeling the familiar ache of disappointment settle in my chest. But I didn't cancel my dinner with Thomas. The following Tuesday, Jason showed up at my house unannounced. I was in the kitchen making myself a cup of tea, when I heard the sharp knock at the door. I opened it to find him standing there, still in his work suit, his face tight with irritation. Jason, I said, surprised. I wasn't expecting you. We need to talk, he said, brushing past me into the living room. I closed the door slowly, my heart already sinking. He stood in the middle of the room, hands on his hips, looking at me like I was a child who'd misbehaved. Vanessa heard from someone at the country club that you were seen at a restaurant last weekend, he said. His voice clipped. With a man. And blinked. And it's humiliating, Mom. His jaw clenched. Do you have any idea how that reflects on me? On us? How does me having dinner with a friend reflect on you at all? I asked, genuinely confused. Because people talk, he hissed. Vanessa's friends are already whispering. They think it's pathetic. A woman your age acting like. Like what, Jason? I interrupted, my voice firmer now. Like I'm still alive. Like I still deserve companionship. His face twisted with something I couldn't quite name. Disgust. Shame. You're my mother, he said, his voice low and cruel. You should have some dignity. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and venomous. I stared at my son, this man I had sacrificed everything for, and felt something inside me harden. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of my house, Jason. He stared at me, stunned, as if he couldn't believe I was standing up to him. You're being ridiculous, he muttered, but he turned toward the door. Just before he left, he looked back at me, his eyes cold. Don't embarrass yourself, Mom, he said. Or me. And then he was gone. I stood there in the silence of my living room, my hands trembling. But I wasn't sad. I was angry. And I was done apologizing for wanting to be happy. The next evening, I decided I wasn't going to hide anymore. Thomas had invited me over for dinner at his place, but I had a better idea. I called him that afternoon and asked if he'd mind coming to my house instead. I told him I wanted to cook for him, that it would mean something special to me. He agreed without hesitation. That's the kind of man Thomas was. Thoughtful. Understanding. Everything my son wasn't. I spent the entire day preparing. I cleaned the house until it sparkled. I pulled out my good china, the set I'd been saving for special occasions that never seemed to come. I made my grandmother's recipe for herb-roasted chicken with garlic potatoes and green beans. I even baked an apple pie from scratch. And then I got ready. I showered, styled my hair, and put on makeup. Not too much, just enough to feel beautiful. I chose a dress I hadn't worn in years, a deep emerald green that had always made me feel elegant. I looked at myself in the mirror and smiled. I looked happy. For the first time in months, I actually looked forward to the evening ahead. Thomas was due to arrive at 7. At 6:15, I heard a car door slam outside. My heart sank. I peeked through the curtain and saw Jason's black sedan parked in my driveway. He got out, his face already set in that familiar expression of disapproval, and marched toward my front door. I took a deep breath and opened it before he could knock. Jason, I said calmly. What are you doing here? He looked me up and down, his eyes narrowing as he took in my dress, my makeup, my carefully styled hair. Are you serious right now? He said, his voice dripping with contempt. I'm having a dinner guest, I said simply. You should have called first. He pushed past me into the house, just like he had 2 days ago. A dinner guest, he repeated mockingly, looking around at the set table, the candles I'd lit, the flowers I'd arranged in a vase. Jesus, Mom. This is pathetic. I closed the door and turned to face him, keeping my voice steady. Jason, I'm going to ask you to leave. He laughed, a cold, bitter sound. You're actually going through with this. You're actually pretending like you're on some kind of romantic date. He shook his head. You're 62 years old. You're a grandmother. This is embarrassing. The only thing embarrassing here is your behavior, I said quietly. His face darkened. Vanessa was right, he said, his voice turning nasty. She said you were acting desperate. I defended you, but clearly I was wrong. Desperate, I repeated, my chest tightening. For wanting companionship. For wanting to feel like I matter to someone. You matter to your family, he snapped. Or you would, if you weren't so busy chasing after men like some. He stopped himself again, but this time I wasn't going to let it go. Like some what, Jason? Asked, my voice sharp. Say it. His jaw clenched. His eyes flashed with something ugly. Like a dried-up relic pretending to matter. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at my son, my only child, the boy I had given everything to, and felt something inside me break. But I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I simply looked him in the eye and smiled. You'll see, I said softly. He blinked, confused by my reaction. What? You'll see, I repeated. Now please leave. My guest will be here soon. He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Who the hell would want you? He said cruelly. What kind of man is desperate enough to? The doorbell rang. Jason froze. I walked past him, my head held high, and opened the door. Thomas stood on my doorstep, holding a bottle of wine and a bouquet of white roses. He was dressed in a crisp button-down shirt and slacks, his silver hair neatly combed. He smiled when he saw me. Jessica, he said warmly. You look absolutely stunning. Thank you, Thomas, I said, stepping aside to let him in. Please come in. He stepped inside, and his eyes immediately landed on Jason, who stood frozen in the middle of the living room. Thomas's smile faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly, extending his hand. Hello, he said politely. You must be Jessica's son. I'm Thomas. Jason didn't move. He just stared. And then I saw it, the exact moment recognition hit him. His face went pale. His eyes widened. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Because Jason knew exactly who Thomas was. Thomas Whitfield. Senior partner at Caldwell & Whitfield, one of the most prestigious law firms in the state. The same firm where Jason had been desperately trying to make partner for the past 3 years. The same Thomas Whitfield who had the power to approve or deny Jason's promotion. The same man Jason had been trying to impress for months. Mr. Whitfield, Jason finally stammered, his voice strangled. I didn't realize. Thomas's expression shifted slightly as he looked between us, clearly sensing the tension in the room. Jason, Thomas said slowly, his tone cooling. I didn't know you were Jessica's son. The silence that followed was suffocating. Jason's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. His face had gone from pale to red, a bead of sweat forming at his temple. I stood there, my hand still on the door, watching my son's entire world tilt on its axis. We were just, Jason stammered, looking desperately between Thomas and me. I was just stopping by to check on my mother. How thoughtful, Thomas said. His voice polite but noticeably colder than it had been moments before. Jason swallowed hard. I should go, he said quickly, moving toward the door. But before he left, his eyes met mine. And in that moment I saw everything. The panic, the humiliation, the sudden desperate realization that he had made a terrible, terrible mistake. Enjoy your evening, Jason, I said softly. He left without another word. I closed the door behind him and turned to Thomas, who was watching me with concern in his eyes. I'm so sorry about that, I said quietly. Thomas shook his head, stepping closer and gently taking my hand. You have nothing to apologize for, Jessica, he said. Nothing at all. Thomas and I had a wonderful dinner. Despite the tension of Jason's unexpected appearance, Thomas was the perfect gentleman. He complimented my cooking, told me stories about his late wife and how she used to make apple pie just like my grandmother's recipe, and made me laugh until my sides hurt. For those few hours I forgot about everything else. I forgot about Jason's cruelty, about Vanessa's judgment, about feeling invisible and unwanted. I just felt seen. When Thomas left around 10 o'clock, he kissed my cheek at the door and asked if he could take me to the symphony the following weekend. I said yes without hesitation. After he left, I cleaned up the kitchen, still smiling to myself. I half expected my phone to ring, for Jason to call and apologize, or at least try to explain himself. But the call didn't come that night. It came the next morning. At 7 a.m. my phone rang. I was still in my bathrobe making coffee when I saw Jason's name on the screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Hello, Jason, I said calmly. Mom. His voice was tight, controlled. We need to talk. Can I come over? I'm not available today, I said. I have plans. Mom, please. There was an edge of desperation in his voice now. It's important. It's about last night. Hey. I think we should clear the air. I took a sip of my coffee, letting him wait. Clear the air. I repeated. You mean about you calling me a dried-up relic in my own home? Silence. He exhaled sharply. I shouldn't have said that. I was upset. You have to understand, Vanessa has been on my case about. I don't want to hear about Vanessa right now, Jason, I interrupted. What I want is for you to think very carefully about how you've treated me over the past few weeks. And then maybe, when you're ready to have an honest conversation, we can talk. Mom, you don't understand, he said, his voice rising slightly. Thomas Whitfield is. I know exactly who Thomas is, I said quietly. And that's precisely why I'm not having this conversation with you right now. Hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From something else entirely. Power. For the first time in years, I held something my son wanted. And he knew it. Over the next 3 days, Jason called me 6 times. I didn't answer. He sent text messages. Short at first, then increasingly frantic. Mom, please call me back. We need to talk about this. It's important. I'm sorry about what I said. Can we please just talk? Mom, my partnership review is in 2 weeks. Please. I read each message and deleted it without responding. On Thursday evening, Vanessa called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello, Vanessa, I said. Jessica. Her voice was clipped, professional, like she was negotiating a business deal. I think we need to have a conversation. Woman to woman. Do we? Yes. Look, she said, and I could hear her choosing her words carefully. Jason told me what happened, and I want you to know that I understand he was out of line. He shouldn't have said those things to you. No, he shouldn't have, I agreed. But you have to understand the position this puts us in, she continued, her tone hardening slightly. Jason has worked incredibly hard to get where he is. This partnership means everything to him, to our family, to our children's future. I'm aware, I said. Then you must see how complicated this situation is, Vanessa said. Your relationship with Thomas Whitfield. My relationship. I interrupted. Vanessa, I've been on exactly 3 dates with Thomas. We enjoy each other's company. That's all. But it's not just all, is it? She said, her voice sharp now. Because Thomas Whitfield is the man who decides whether Jason makes partner or not. And if he thinks Jason's family is dysfunctional, or if you do something to upset him, or if I what, Vanessa? Asked, my voice cold. If I dare to live my life. If I refuse to disappear just because it's more convenient for you. Silence on the other end. I didn't mean it like that, she said finally, but her tone said otherwise. Yes, you did, I said quietly. You've always seen me as an embarrassment. Someone to be hidden away. Someone who doesn't fit into your perfect suburban life. That's not. It is, Vanessa. And you know what? I'm done pretending it doesn't hurt. I'm done making myself smaller so you and Jason can feel more comfortable. Jessica, please. Tell Jason that when he's ready to apologize, really apologize, not just because he needs something from me, then we can talk. But until then, I'm going to keep living my life. And if that makes things complicated for him, well, maybe he should have thought about that before he called his mother a dried-up relic. I hung up before she could respond. My heart was pounding, but I felt free. For years, I'd walked on eggshells around them. I'd accepted their judgment, their dismissal, their casual cruelty, because I was afraid of losing what little connection I had left with my son. But what was I really losing? A phone call once a month. An obligatory visit twice a year. I deserved more than that. That Saturday, Thomas took me to the symphony, just as he'd promised. We sat in the elegant concert hall, surrounded by beautifully dressed people, and listened to Tchaikovsky under the soft glow of chandeliers. Thomas held my hand during the performance, and afterward, we had champagne at a nearby wine bar. I have to tell you something, Thomas said as we sat across from each other, the candlelight flickering between us. What is it? Yes. I know Jason is your son, he said gently. And I know he's up for partner at my firm. I nodded slowly. I assumed you'd figured that out. I want you to know that what happens between you and me has nothing to do with his career, Thomas said, his eyes serious. I would never let my personal life influence a professional decision. Jason will be judged solely on his merit and his work. I appreciate that, I said softly. But I also need you to know. He paused, choosing his words carefully. The way he spoke to you that night. The things I overheard before I came in. That concerns me. My chest tightened. You heard. Some of it, he admitted. And Jessica, a man who speaks to his mother that way. It tells me something about his character. That does factor into partnership decisions. Not because of you, but because of him. I looked down at my champagne glass, processing his words. Jason had done this to himself. The confrontation came 2 weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon. I was in my garden, planting tulip bulbs for the spring, when I heard a car pull into my driveway. I looked up to see Jason getting out, his face haggard and drawn. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. I stood up slowly, brushing the dirt from my gardening gloves. Jason, I said evenly. Mom. His voice cracked slightly. Please. I need to talk to you. I gestured to the patio chairs. Sit. He sat down heavily, his hands clasped between his knees. For a long moment, he just stared at the ground. I didn't get the partnership, he said finally. I didn't respond. I just waited. Whitfield called me into his office on Friday, Jason continued, his voice hollow. He said that while my legal work was exemplary, the firm had concerns about my character, my judgment, my ability to represent the firm's values. He looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. He didn't mention you specifically. He didn't have to. I knew exactly what he meant. Jason's voice broke. I ruined everything, didn't I? I sat down across from him, removing my gardening gloves slowly. You didn't ruin everything because of Thomas, Jason, I said quietly. You ruined it because of how you treated me. Thomas didn't have to overhear you that night. He didn't have to know what kind of son you'd become. But he did. And that showed him exactly who you are when you think no one important is watching. Jason's face crumpled. I'm so sorry, Mom, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I was horrible to you. I said unforgivable things. Vanessa kept saying you were embarrassing us, and I was so stressed about the partnership, and I Stop, I said firmly. Don't blame Vanessa. You're a grown man, Jason. You made your own choices. He nodded, tears streaming down his face now. I know I did. He wiped his eyes roughly. I've been thinking about it constantly. About everything you did for me. How you worked yourself to exhaustion to give me opportunities. How you never asked for anything in return. And how I repaid you by treating you like you were nothing. I felt my own eyes sting, but I didn't let the tears fall. Do you know what hurt the most? I asked softly. It wasn't the name-calling. It wasn't even the judgment. It was that you made me feel like I wasn't allowed to be happy. Like my only purpose was to be your mother, and once you didn't need me anymore, I was supposed to just fade away quietly. That's not. He stopped himself. That's exactly what I did, isn't it? Yes, I said simply. That's exactly what you did. We sat in silence for a long moment, the autumn breeze rustling the leaves around us. Can you forgive me? Jason asked finally, his voice small. I know I don't deserve it. I know I've been awful. But you're my mom and I can't lose you. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw not the successful lawyer or the ungrateful child, but the scared little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. I can forgive you, Jason, I said slowly. But things can't go back to the way they were. I won't be invisible anymore. I won't apologize for living my life. And I won't tolerate disrespect, from you or from Vanessa. I understand, he said quickly. I'll do better. Promise. We both will. I hope so, I said. Because I want you in my life, Jason. I want to see my grandchildren. I want to have Sunday dinners and family holidays. But only if I'm treated with dignity and respect. He nodded vigorously. You will be. I swear it. I reached across and took his hand. Then we'll start over, I said. Slowly. One step at a time. For the first time in weeks, Jason smiled. A genuine, grateful smile. Thank you, Mom, he whispered. 3 months have passed since that afternoon in my garden. Jason and I talk twice a week now. He and Vanessa invited me to Thanksgiving dinner, and Vanessa actually apologized. Stiffly, but sincerely. I see my grandchildren regularly now, and they're starting to know me as more than just a stranger who shows up twice a year. Jason found a position at another firm, one where he says the culture is better, more focused on integrity than just billable hours. And Thomas, he's still in my life. We take things slow, but we're happy. He's teaching me to play chess, and I'm teaching him to bake. That evening when Jason showed up at my door and saw who my date really was changed everything. Not just because of the partnership, but because it forced my son to see me as a person again. Someone with feelings, with dignity, with the right to pursue happiness. I'm 62 years old, and I'm finally learning that it's never too late to choose yourself. So let me ask you, do you think I was too hard on Jason? Or should I have made him work harder to earn my forgiveness? Drop your answer in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if this story resonated with you, if you know what it's like to feel invisible or undervalued by the people you love most, then please subscribe. These stories matter. Your story matters. And I'll be here every week sharing more journeys like this one. 'Cause we all deserve to be seen.